All right, welcome to yet another podcast from iAnimate. I'm your host, Larry Vasquez, and joining me once again is Rick Arroyo. How you doing, Rick?
What's up? Hey, everybody. How you guys doing?
Man, we are knocking these out, aren't we?
We are working like mad dog.
I don't want to keep up with this pace, so I'm hoping nobody's getting spoiled out there. But we just really, honestly, we have a lot going on, and it's been really neat with the instructors wanting to jump on and take some time with us. And we actually got a different show tonight. We've got two guests that'll be joining us here, and we're going to take a little bit of a different approach here with this one. We've had the last couple here, and three after this or so. A lot of them are instructors and professionals. But we're going to actually take it from a different point tonight and have our two guests, Jeff Williams and Darrell Vasquez, my brother, and taking it kind of more from professionals who have been our students and or students right now. So I think it'll kind of be a different and unique podcast tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's always fun to hear what our students or our graduates are saying and what they have learned and what they have brought to their studios that they're working at, and just really hearing their voice, you know?
Right. Well, let's pull in our guest tonight here. Hang on, let's get him over here.
Hi,
Jeff,
guys.
how are you?
What's going on?
How's it going? We're waiting for Darrell here, but we'll...
Hey.
Hello. How's it going?
Good. What's up?
All right. Well, we really appreciate you guys jumping on here with us and taking some time. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves so that way we can get those who will be listening to recognize your name and voice. That way when you guys start talking here. Jeff, I'm with it?
Yeah. My name's Jeff Williams. I'm an animator at Insomniac Games, and I recently started feature workshops at iAnimate.
I am Darrell Vasquez. I animate alumni and currently working at Insomniac Games.
One of the things I kind of mentioned here at the beginning of the podcast was just kind of wanting to take a little bit of a different feel with this podcast. We've had a couple that we've recorded now with some of our instructors who have been, professionals in the industry for, quite some time now. But one of the things we wanted to do with this podcast in particular was be able to talk with some of the, you guys here who have been students, or currently a student, someone like you, Jeff. And I think the neat mix with you two, Darrell being one of our first class alumni graduates, and then now you, Jeff, who has had a background in animation, still wanting to continue and further your skills there and joining iAnimate. So I think it's going to be kind of a neat discussion on that. Maybe not.
Everyone's like so stunned, like, yeah. I'm really doing this. This is awesome.
Then yes, Larry, it will be a great discussion.
There you go. Darn it, my Magic 8 Ball said this was going to be a great podcast. You guys, no, it's just well, Jeff, we'll start out with you here. How long have you been animating professionally?
I am going on 8 years now. I guess, 8 years come January. 6 of them in video games proper, and then I was 2 years spent kind of as an artist, generalist at a different studio, doing animation, doing painting, doing, all sorts of different stuff.
Okay.
It's kind of a little bit of a different thing from video games, as we normally call them. So it's kind of a weird little 2-year stint outside of that. But
there seems to be sometimes that need to kind of pay a little bit of dues, kind of getting your feet grounded before you're able to do something along that lines, like you mentioned here for the games animation.
Yeah. My first game job was it was kind of tumultuous. I went through all the ups and downs that game industry has been known to, or the reputation of working tons of hours, getting laid off. I took the other job because the ability to do lots of different things I found very exciting. I got to do animation. I got to do logo design and digital painting and all these other things that I still love to do. But it was actually that job that refocused me back on being a character animator and wanting to animate characters full time and do nothing else. So it was a great experience, if for nothing else, for that.
Okay. Now, did you have some training beforehand in animation?
Yeah, I went to college in Chicago, the Illinois Institute of Art, with a majoring in media arts and animation. And then I also went to Animation Mentor back in 2007. And that was a great experience. It helped me get to where I am today. And then decided that, I really wanted to push myself even further. And that's why I jumped into iAnimate.
Very cool. Yeah, that was one of the things that kind of why I wanted to get with you guys here, and Rick and I. My wife has mentioned one time, kind of going, well, if these guys are kind of already working in the industry, why would they, want to join iAnimate? And to me, it's kind of like what you're doing now. It's just that idea of wanting to always progress and get better and refine your skills there. This is your first block right now at iAnimate, right?
Yeah. Yep. This is my first time through. I sent my stuff to Jason, and I think with my background being in games, I had a pretty decent structure with and understanding body mechanics. So he put me into class 4. And I've been having a blast with it. It's been great.
Yeah, we've seen some of your shots. Really cool.
Thank you.
Awesome stuff.
Thank you.
One of the things I like about iAnimate and being able to get some of you guys like this who are professionals already working in the industry and getting you guys in is it has definitely raised the bar. I remember this was our first workshop, and I was in workshop 3, and I think it was the first week people started showing some stuff on the site. I was blown away. I was going, oh man, I gotta bring my A game, And so it's been really neat getting guys like you to be able to jump in and want to refine your skills, because it's allowed other people to kind of really raise that bar there.
I totally agree. My class was a good example. There was we had a lot of people of very varying degrees of expertise. Some people that had a bunch of people that were professionals already, some people that had only been animating, a year because they had just started iAnimate. Mm-hmm. And it's a great mix of students, because you always get something new out of it.
Right.
I think if you had too many people that were all pros, they wouldn't ask the questions that the new guys would ask.
Right.
And if there weren't new guys in there, you might not get some explanations on some things that you forgot about years ago. And it was great. It was really awesome.
Now, who's your instructor right now?
I have Luke Randall.
Okay, yeah. I've watched some of his lectures. Very neat instructor.
Oh, he's terrific. Yeah, he's fantastic.
Now, Darrell, D, I call him. Sorry, it's going to be tough to call him Darrell on this. So if I call him D, that's why. He's been called D for quite some time back in his wrestling days. One of the reasons why I want to bring you in as well is because you have a different perspective on this, being one of our first graduating class, not having an animation background as far as working in the industry yet. You want to tell us a little bit how you kind of got started with iAnimate, and maybe where it's helped prepare you now working in the couple studios you had so far since graduation?
Yeah, I got started with animation with basically following Jason Ryan and his tutorials, and that was my intro to animation. And once he opened up the school, it was all in for me, just because of his workflow, his willingness to help people and encourage them. So yeah, I got started with that. Started in workshop 3, which is now 4. Started there and just had a blast. I was actually in those classes with people that were far more superior than me. Their professional level was just super high, and not only did I feel astonished with their work, I felt inadequate to be in class with them, but it definitely pushed me. It pushed me to work harder, and get caught up, to catch up to where they were. So it was just been an awesome experience.
Now, how do you think, because Rick and I were talking about one of the blogs that Richard Lico had an interview on, and he was talking about internship, and he was kind of talking about how not always, but they can be a drain on a company, because you're using a lot of time and resources with having to train that person. And he kind of analogized, a program like iAnimate as kind of that internship. Here you are with a professional now, same thing you would be doing in a company, and you're with them week in, week out with that training. How do you feel like iAnimate and the workshops that you took prepared you to jump into these studios that, you didn't have that background in?
Yeah, I think it prepared me in many ways just to deal with directors and leads. Just as you would treat your instructor. They're giving you notes. They're dealing with you on a daily basis. But I think at the same time too, along with the camaraderie of the school, you kind of got to see how it was to have fellow coworkers too. I was just talking with Jeff today and just how much we gain from each other. I ask him tons of questions, so it's not just getting it from your instructor and your directors and such, but it's your coworkers, it's your classmates. You're pushing forward together, and for me that was huge.
Very good. Now, you started out, your first gig out of iAnimate was at Magnetic Dreams?
Yes.
Yeah, with Andrew Adberry.
Adberry, yeah. One of our one of our graduates. He's at Disney now, and he posted the job on the site, and I had got to meet him a couple times at CTN, and some of these iAnimate get-togethers, and they were looking for temp guys, contract guys, and he went straight to the site because he knew the animators were there, and it was cool getting to work with someone that you got to enjoy and learn from as classmates.
And so that was kind of it's about a small to mid-sized studio, and then that was kind of able to transition you from there to now Insomniac, where it's
yeah, that was a small studio.
Yeah, okay.
Not a mid-size. That was
okay.
A small studio, which was awesome. It was actually really unique, really getting to know mostly everybody in the studio. You got to go out to lunch every day we had 4 or 5 animators, and it was really cool getting to know those guys. And yeah, it definitely helped prepare me for I would say Insomniac's a mid-sized group. And it was good learning ground. It felt like that establishment kind of, okay, I'm a professional animator now, and you just got to move forward. So
very cool. Jeff, how'd you hear about iAnimate?
I had I kind of similar to Darrell. I'd followed Jason's stuff for a long time. Back when he was still with Animation Mentor when I was taking AM.
He was one of the first class instructors or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I followed his stuff, and I loved that he was still doing things outside of their program, and I kept up with what he was doing. And then I had a bunch of friends that were in the same position. They were professional animators. They were already working, with me, and they were taking it. And I was watching their work skyrocket. And I was like, if I have the time, if there's a space in my schedule for that stuff, I'm gonna do it, no question. And then I weirdly picked the time where we were like crunching the most on this game to do this. I didn't know if that was a huge mistake. It ended up working out okay, but I was really amped to do it.
Well, let's talk about that, because most of our students are working professionals. How has balancing iAnimate with your current workload been?
It's I'll be honest, it wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be. I expected it to be a nightmare. I get into work. I'm in there pretty early, and I work a good day, but I try not to mess around. When I'm at work, I want to do work, and I don't want to, take time away to be playing ping pong outside or doing, like that. I'm there. I want to work.
Right.
So, it hasn't been too bad. And then I just reserve time, during the weekend. Like, this is when I'm going to work on my shot for iAnimate. It's going to be Thursday night, Friday night, all day Saturday if need be. And then I just, I get it done. Like, I'm used to a tight deadline, and I just, I went through the same thing years back with Animation Mentor for 2 years worth. And I was kind of used to what I need to do to get that done while working professionally. So, and luckily our crunch, at least for some of the animators, wasn't as bad as it was for other departments. Yeah, I think Darrell and I could think of somebody who would disagree with us, but at least for some of us, it wasn't terrible. Yeah.
What are some nuggets that you've taken from, because we're at our 14th week right now for this block, and this is obviously your first one here. What are some nuggets that you think that you've taken, because sometimes, I mean, I tell you what, that 14 weeks can kind of fly by.
Oh, this one totally has.
Yeah. But you think about it, that's 3.5 months.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good chunk of time. What are some things that you feel like you've kind of taken away from it for this block that was kind of worth your time and money?
There's some things that directly impacted what I was able to do at work, which was great. Like, I didn't get to spend, I was working on Fuse, and I didn't get to spend a whole lot of time doing the cinematic stuff. But when I was getting some pretty, it was perfect because I was getting some close-up acting shots, and all this stuff that Luke was hammering me on and, drilling into my brain every week was paying dividends immediately. Like, it was just, I could see that when you're on a tight deadline, and I was putting all that new knowledge into what I was doing at work, and that was fantastic. And then, just being able to polish, which we don't always get to do in our situation. Typically, the game environment is, you may be spending 3 years on a game or whatever it is, but you'd be surprised at how fast things change on a day-to-day basis. You may not get to polish as much as you want. I felt like the stuff I was getting out of Luke's class helped me get to a more polished state quicker for the game.
I just want to know, did you adapt your workflow or modify some of your workflow since you were doing these classes?
I didn't change it too much. I felt like I had a better sense of what idea I was going to go with at the start. Working on, I think Darrell would agree with this too, working on something like Ratchet and Clank where you're doing 30 seconds of animation a week, like, you get pretty fast at this stuff. So it was more about like just getting that good idea in there early and being able to spend more time on the polished stuff, which was great. Yeah.
That's one area I noticed for Darrell here, obviously being my brother, I keep up with him. But noticing that some of the stuff that he was working on the side, his own personal stuff, it seemed to jump significantly when he was now actually in the studios where, and probably particularly for these kind of situations here where you have a shorter deadline, it seemed like he was able to get more time into that polishing, and it just seemed to really skyrocket in regards to his workflow. And that was actually one of the things I think I talked to Rick 2 years back at CTN or maybe it was a year back at CTN when we were talking about the games workshops in general. Obviously there is a difference within the in-game cinematics, and that's why these games workshops have been specifically for that. But I noticed a lot of these guys have talked about how it's, even if they want to go into television or feature, it's definitely helped improve their workflow because they've had to get results faster. And then now, like you're saying here, to be able to kind of spend that extra time in that polish now when you have it.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like I was saying before, it can change so fast. I mean, some of the things that you'll do on Monday won't be the same thing you'll do on Friday. Or the thing you did Monday is gone by Thursday, And it's all about getting the idea in quickly so people can see it. And as that was something that Luke always tried to get us to do at the first part of each assignment, where he says the fewest amount of poses possible to tell the story as completely as it needs to be. And I think that's what we try to do at Insomniac, is we're in a good situation where designers and people who aren't animators can see stepped keys and understand it still, for the most part. And a lot of other places I've worked, it's got to be pretty much splined out and final before they understand what's in the game.
And then say no or not.
And then say no, exactly. So we're in a good situation that we can get if we can block something in really quickly and put it in the game and get people's eyes on it, we can get a yes or a no or a push this, change that. And being able to iterate quickly like that has been a huge help. I think the animators at Insomniac are great at being able to put something in very fast and see what it looks like.
Darrell, is that the same for you? Do you find when you finish iAnimate and you started at your first studio, did you find that you were picking up, fast these or applying these techniques that you were learning?
Yeah, applying them quickly, but having to adapt even quicker. I felt like my workflow was continuing to change. And being an alumni, I'm still on the site every day. I was still listening to instructors that I love listening to and watching their workflow. And I was just continuing to go, okay, how can I change this? How can I catch up? How can, like Jeff's saying, you have 30 seconds of animation on 4 characters in a week. You have to start honing down on those things. And that's, I think, my biggest grasp was I was going, I have to pick a workflow and I have to get it fleshed out because these things have to get done so quickly. And I think that's exactly it is I was now taking everything I've learned, this pile of knowledge, and now going, how can I apply this efficiently and get where I want to get the polish, get the animation, get everything I want in as quickly as I can. And it did with Ratchet, and especially Ratchet, having so much footage a week. It was like you have to decide. There's no second guessing. You don't have time to go backwards and go, this isn't working, I'm going to redo it. You have to make the best of what it is. So
Yeah, not if you wanted to go home that day.
I think a lot of guys who are listening might not know this, but often in games, the cinematic is done towards the end of a project because of the story hasn't been locked down or the boards haven't been locked down. If you get boards, if you're lucky enough, I mean, if you're at a great studio, you might get some type of boards. But that being said, often cinematics can be changed, like Jeff was saying, or a part of the game can be changed the same day that you just finished it. So
Yeah.
So was that challenging for you guys, or probably more for Darrell? Was that challenging for you to really like going into like the game industry and realizing that things can change so quickly?
Yeah, you really, I mean, I remember hearing from pros all the time going, this isn't your work. This is somebody else's project. Don't put too much, don't hold on to your work too much. And we had to do that in class, when they're going, hey, this isn't working. You're like, oh my gosh, I poured my heart and soul into it. I don't want to give it up. You have to, it's the name of the game, and really for the best of it, your instructors make your work better. When I talk to my director or my leads or my coworkers, they're making my shots better. It's not that, I'm going to them and asking for their opinion because I want this shot better. And yeah, you have to just learn to let go of shots and roll with the punches, because I've lost plenty of shots. I've had cameras change on last days that I'm supposedly just doing polished cleanup, and I had 8 cameras changed, and you're going, okay, well, you just got to roll with the punches. Got to make it work.
Do you find that when you were even for you, Jeff, now, do you find that your instructors are helping you get out of your comfort zone and helping you push yourself to the next level?
Yeah, definitely. Excuse me. Luke is great at that, and we were talking to Luke today about how apparently he has a reputation for giving a lot of notes around the site, and some of them are big. Some of them are big notes, but you trust the guy. I know, and I can see it immediately as soon as he says it. He's right. This is a good note. It's going to be a little painful to go through there, and sometimes he would give me a note like that 3 weeks in a row, and it's a sizable note, but it's always in the service of the shot and making it better. And I think that's great when you get we're in a situation where we have great instructors that we can trust, and I think we've got a great team at Insomniac that we can trust their opinions on and know that it's not getting feedback that's going to ruin the shot or ruin the action or whatever it is, just out of the blue. It's all in service of making it better. And I think that, to reinforce that in both directions, at work and at school, that's what you couldn't ask for anything better there.
Yeah, I really think the relationship, and I'm just talking, personally, I believe the relationship that we have with our students, or the students have with our instructors, I think it's a great relationship. It's not just like, hey, come to class and I'm just going to give you your critiques or whatnot, but really talk to these guys. And even when I got the chance to meet you guys at CTN, like I personally enjoyed it, and I think it helps when we give critiques, or the instructors give critiques, to know like, hey, it might sound like I'm hard on you guys, or this is a really, really, I know you're not going to enjoy this comment, but trust me on this one, I'm doing this out of love.
Here comes the
You
bomb.
know?
Huh?
Here
Yeah.
comes the bomb. Yeah. So
No, I totally agree. I totally agree. I mean, it's been pretty great. This is my first workshop, and I've already experienced that, with Luke, a great way. Like, the guy's super genuine, and he's super nice, and he just wants to make everybody better. And I think that's why I went to the school in the first place, just to be around people like that.
Darrell, I know you mentioned jumping into Insomniac, working on Ratchet and Clank. That was just released a couple weeks back here?
It was just released last week.
Last week? Okay.
Yeah, last week.
What's the full title?
Ratchet and Clank Full Frontal Assault.
yeah, go get the game.
That's right. A little plug for the guys.
Q Force for those overseas.
All right. Now, one of the things I remember talking to you on this project was having to sink or swim type deal, and learning to animate these characters. You don't know who they are really. I mean, you maybe checking out some of the games and stuff, and talking about how even months later, by the time you're getting on multiple other shots here, how those came a lot more natural now that you knew the characters. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's funny even watching them now that the game's released, and seeing all the cinematics lit. It's like, oh my gosh, I want to go back to those first shots I did and redo them, because yeah, they threw me in, and my first day, my director shows me my shot. We play through the animatic, and he's like,
It's 12 minutes long.
Yeah, it's like almost 2 minutes long, literally 2 minutes long. And he's like, yeah, we'll get this done in about 4 weeks. And I'm like, this whole thing, like the first shot in it, or like the whole thing? And he's like, oh, you'll get it. And I'm like, yeah, right. But yeah, definitely as time went on, you begin to go, okay, this is something that Ratchet would do, this works for Quark. This doesn't work for these other characters. And you fall into a rhythm of yeah, this is what the character is. This is who they are. And really in film, or, whatever it is, you'll kind of see that in boards. You'll see that from your supervisor. And with me, when I got there, my director put me with two animators who have worked on Ratchet for many years, and they knew him. So that helped too, because it was like, no, that's not what Ratchet looks like. That's, his eyes don't look like that. His pupils aren't that big. His ears don't flap like. It was like, you're like, okay, well, how do they? And with that help, you begin to realize, okay, this is what it is, or this is what it is to animate Ratchet. This is what he looks like. This is how he moves. This is how he stands. And yeah, but it all comes from the good instructor that you had at iAnimate, and it really it put me into, okay, I can listen to these guys. I trust these guys. They've worked with it forever. They know what they're talking about. So that definitely helped out a lot.
Because yeah, I'm thinking at something like iAnimate, for the most part, you're working on your own shots. You're coming up with their own character, their background, and stuff like that. So basically, what you're saying though is that just working with your instructor, you were able to adapt to something like that just by sheer being able to take feedback.
Yeah, feedback. I think feedback is the big thing. Yeah, once you have leads and you have people that already know, they've already been immersed in this, and they already know how to animate these characters. You just have to take their word. You gotta take their guidance and let them help you along as you figure it out. And by the end, like you said, I knew who they were. Then by the end of the show, I go, okay, I know who they are. I know how they need to be animated.
Yeah, I think we went through some of those issues on Fuse. Fuse is it's a brand new IP. These characters have never been shown to the public before. So there was some growing pains, within the team about, well, would he do this, or would she act like this, or what what is her most appealing facial shape? Or, we would go back and forth, and, you give the same line of dialogue to all these different animators, and they'll animate them totally differently. So that was something we had to, definitely figure out on Fuse, was who are these characters, and because the nature of the story in a game environment can change. Sometimes that character changed dramatically from the person we used to know to this new identity or new backstory or new information based on something that was written for them. That was a huge challenge for us.
Now, we can't talk too much about Fuse because it's not released yet, but I remember you saying something along the lines that there was a style change in regards to the animation. Can you kind of work your way around talking about that?
Yeah, I hope Ted's not listening to this. No, but I mean, it's you can see it in the if you go to YouTube and look at the Overstrike trailer, the original Overstrike trailer, and then look at the new stuff under Fuse. We were going originally a much more campy direction. It was almost entirely hand keyed at that point. And I think Ted has admitted to this publicly, like the game just wasn't there yet. Like we didn't have the gameplay to support this stuff, and it was more style than anything. And it was difficult. I mean, I animated basically the opening cinematic hand keyed, that then was scrapped and it was mocapped in a studio. I had the whole thing almost done. Yeah. I had almost the entire thing finished, and that was interesting. It was a little, it was a bummer for sure, but at least we knew that, like, okay, we found the identity of this game. And coming off of especially the Ratchet crew type of people who love to work on the hand keyed cartoony stuff, you hear motion capture and you start to shudder a little bit, but we still got to hand key a ton of stuff, and we were still, even motion capture, it doesn't work right out of the gate. You've got to edit it heavily if you want it to have any sort of personality. So we would just adapt. You just push it and make it either take what the mocap gave you, or barely use it and say, for what this action really needs, it's got to be all me here. And then that's the cool part, is trying to blend. This is hand keyed, this is mocap, and hopefully you can't tell the difference. Yeah, it was actually, I'm not sure if Rick and I were talking about how we're going to release these here, but just for the record here, this one was recorded after the Alexis Winteroy podcast. So depending on when we release it or not, I don't know. But actually, we got into talking a little bit about motion capture and kind of that same thing, where not necessarily needing to be, shy away from it, but just that even the idea that you can use it for even just a blocking, take what you can from it there. And I know they often use that a lot in games there to get you up the ladder, so to speak, for a bit, and then hand key out the rest of it from there. Yeah, totally. We, listeners may not be familiar with the Movin suit, which is, you may have seen it on other like VFX making ofs, or it's a cameraless motion capture suit that you can kind of just go out and do a parking lot and wear this suit, and it's all got markers all over the body, sensors on the body, and we use that heavily for previs on our cinematics. It's got its limitations, so you had to be careful with where you use it. Obviously, you wouldn't want to do any combat moves because you break one of these sensors and it's thousands of dollars you got to pay back.
Jeff knows from experience. The way he's talking, he's like, yeah, let me tell you, it's quite a bit of money.
He wears a suit around the studio a lot.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a bony guy, and those things hurt. But we would use that stuff, to help us. At least in cinematics, a lot of our cinematics were previs that way. And sometimes you could use it if it wasn't a crazy actiony shot. Other times it was just, this isn't really that usable, but it helps me plan out the timing, helps me block this thing out. So there's definitely, give and take. You can get you a starting point faster, but
or it can kind of be used almost like reference where you're kind of at least, like you said, see then timing or seeing.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that Alexis mentioned in the podcast was just being able to see it in Previs to see, okay, can this character make it from this point to this point correctly in the room, figuring that out via that method, then trying to animate it, blocking it out and going, okay, this isn't working.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you could get that information pretty quickly because we would use it in conjunction with Motion Builder, and we can build out, chalk outlines on the ground and figure out this is the size of our set and watch the character move in that environment in real time and say, okay, this character cannot fit inside this helicopter because the helicopter was built too small or something. That may or may not have actually happened, but it's things like that are very helpful, to understand. Yeah.
I think the Mocap too for animation and body mechanics is extremely helpful to really see what real motion, real life human motion is, and you really get to dissect things that you wouldn't even see in reference unless you really had markers on your body to really see what your shoulder's doing and all these little super highly detailed areas that really help your eye for hand keyed stuff. You can now see what realistic, completely hyper realistic motion is compared to somewhat stylized action is. So I think that also is helpful. I was the same way going in. I was like, oh man, mocap, I want to hand key this. But you can use it, and you can, there's definitely a happy medium, and you can actually learn from it.
That's a good point. I remember just being introduced to using reference here at iAnimate, a class of Ted T, just talking about when we shot reference. He just mentioned, literally watch your reference like 20, 30, 40 times. Thinking, really? I shot it. I know it. But it's not until you get multiple weeks into your shot that you realize, no, you didn't know exactly what the hips were doing or the shoulders in relationship to that. So, yeah, I can see where you can even use something like motion capture to kind of at least even start building that library in your head, how the body actually works.
Yeah, totally. I agree.
For Fuse, you mentioned that style change there, or the style change, but the characters also changed. Now, was the characters changing because of the style, or was it because of the story, or how did that work?
It was kind of a combination of the two. We have the game originally wasn't going to be M rated, and we were going for kind of a soft teen rating. And it was kind of at a hard angle with what we actually wanted to do with the gameplay. That rating was really kind of killing us there a little bit. So we made the decision that if we're going to make the game that we really want to make, some of this more campy elements, some of the more cartoony stuff, it's not going to fit quite as well anymore. So we made that push into being much more. The characters are still a little stylized. We're not going, trying to replicate reality. We're not making a simulator by any means, but, we needed to push things more in that direction. A good example of that is, if you remember from the Overstrike trailer, there's the kind of like big robot at the end got completely redesigned, and ironically, that was the character I was in charge of, and I had the whole character done. I had all his move sets done. I had everything in the game for that guy. They redesigned him entirely, and then I redid all that work, and then they scaled him up 50% like a few months after that. So then I redid that work because he was now too light for all those animations. But ultimately, I think the character's way cooler now because he towers over the heroes, and he's very threatening. And in the past, he really wasn't that threatening. He was very spindly. He had a weird silver skull thing going on, and he was kind of small. He looked, you didn't notice that he was any bigger than you unless you walked right up next to him. And those were challenges for sure. But ultimately, in the end, I think they were the right decisions that had to be made.
That was one of the things I think we talked about again in our last podcast. Just that payoff, that thing you see at the end, it makes all that labor, like you're saying right there, you're going, oh, I just spent all this time working on this character, now it's completely scrapped. But now you're saying at the end, looking at it going, okay, no, it was well worth it.
Yeah. I have to give props, especially to our character TDs who make it easier than otherwise it would be to transfer animation and to get somewhere of a starting point back to, instead of going completely fresh, get as much of what we used to do in there as possible and mitigate some of those huge losses. Especially when you're doing a character for the third time, you're like, please write a script or something that can transfer this animation.
You gotta
And they
try
do
to
a fantastic job.
gotta salvage anything you can.
Yeah.
Um, I had a thought in my head, and that joke blew it on me, so I forgot what it was. The rigs. Because one of the things that we have here are just some phenomenal rigs. How are the rigs, at say Insomniac and for games, and then how have you adapted to maybe some of the limitations with them?
Well,
Uh,
I think for me the biggest thing is we can't use blend shapes in a video game, and that's the big difference that we see from our feature rigs and our games rigs is they're all joint based, but I realize that we don't really have much limitations. They're just as expressive. They're just as we have great TDs that clean up the rigs where you're not getting bad shapes by over rotating arms and shoulders and these ugly pinches or angles. They do a fabulous job at keeping everything very seamless. We have tons of scripts and massive amounts of very helpful tools at our hands.
yeah, we really, and sometimes, I mean, you'll open a character and it will be as complex as any, iAnimate or feature rig that I've seen. And you really wouldn't know that you don't have the kind of super clean blend shape deformations, especially on like on a Ratchet and Clank title. I mean, it's all on the face, it's all joint based, but if you can't get a good looking shape, it's really hard to not be able to get what you want. And if you can't, we sit right next to the guys and there's no, you don't have to go up a chain or get something fixed on a rig. You just, dude, fix that and then let's do it. Yeah.
I was more afraid knowing that the rigs we have are some of the best rigs out there, and we've heard from multiple people that these rigs are awesome. And I was afraid going, okay, I'm here working on the best rigs, and now I'm going to go out into the real world and have to work with crappy rigs. And but that was cool actually being able to work with these things and these guys that are great TDs. Like Jeff was saying, we sit right next to one, and it's like, hey, I have a problem here. He's like, oh, here, do this. And it's like, okay, it's done. Cool. Let's just keep animating,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really cool.
So you know what? Let me ask. I'll ask this one to Darrell. I mean, when you started training in the feature workshop, but now you've been working on cinematics. Do you find there's a difference? Do you like working in games? Are you interested in learning more about games and considering doing like in-game animation?
Well, actually, so on Ratchet and Clank, yeah, it was all cinematics. And then I moved over to Fuse and worked on cinematics, but I got to push over into in-game. So I actually got to learn in-game, and that was really cool. And when I moved over to Fuse, I definitely thought about getting into the games workshops because I was like, well, this is interesting, and it's totally different from my way of thinking. It's a completely different way of thinking. And I definitely had to learn it and fight through, very tedious details and all these little joint-based motion joints and things that you don't think about when you're animating. You're going, hey, I want to move my character from point A to point B. But in a game, you go, okay, it has to be able to translate into a gamer and responsiveness. And, there's so much aspects that you have to think about. So, but I see now why iAnimate Games is so important because it is completely different. There's no one taught me it going in it, but I had guys around me that were very helpful and would walk me through it and sit at my desk and go, okay, this is how we enter it into the tools, and this is how you see it, and this is what you need to do to get it working in the game. And yeah, it's a completely different world. But it's they coexist together, but there's definitely unique things about each side of things. Yeah.
Was it I mean, do you find it still hard? Is there a lot of things you're still learning, and were you able to touch a lot of systems, or you just, how,
Yeah,
I mean,
I think there's still a long. I mean, there's still a lot to learn. There's very tedious things, but yeah, I think you can always learn things. I got to touch a lot of things. I got to work on a lot of different aspects of crouches and walks and runs and moving them from a male to female and um, but yeah, I think that I was able to pick it up quickly. Um, but it's very
Different beast.
it's a completely different beast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it
totally
really
is.
is.
I think the Games Workshop guys they're so lucky because nobody was teaching that stuff when I was in college. Like when I got my first job in games, and the first thing I'm doing is trying to get my character to play in the game. I've never seen this stuff ever. And this is back in the day when we're editing text files to get animations to play, and my brain doesn't function that way. So we're in a cool situation now where we have all these new tools at work that are way more artist friendly than stuff that I used in the past. Where, like I said, you're editing text I can't even read that stuff. It looks like the Matrix. And it's now it's much more visual, but there's still always that learning curve of like, all right, I see it's playing in Maya, it looks good in Maya, what's going on, why doesn't it work here? And there's a bunch of layers to kind of work through. Is it AI, is it the tool, is it the export, where is that coming from? And that's all. I've been doing this for 8 years, and I learn more every day.
It's like every problem's a new problem. You have to really problem solve to really get there. And I like what Jeff said, not only the tools being very user friendly, we have good programmers that for the most part, I didn't almost have to worry about anything. They had everything plugged in, ready to go. They're like, hey, just get this animation going. I export it, and I can already be playing it in game and be going, okay, there's a problem here. Go back to Maya, fix it, go back to the game, look at, and it was just kind of learning, just like what Jeff said. You're trying to get what's looking good in Maya to get looking good in the game as you're playing it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's been neat seeing the combination of our feature workshops in our games. Like you said, there's definitely a bridge, but then they're both also very distinct, and so it's been really neat seeing the combination of them too. Particularly when we've had demo reels up, when kind of mixing the two together. So it's been definitely a lot of fun.
yeah, I mean, games is a big thing. There's so much to learn. You're thinking like a designer, but you're an artist, but you have to also be aware of all these technical things and limitations with the engine, or how to deal with an engine, or are you putting the stuff in game? Is the program doing it? Is it a designer doing it? I mean, there's a lot. I mean, for Dow, that must have been like a huge tidal wave. Just like, wow.
I think I even had, I think it might have been one of my first or second ones. I finished it and I was like, okay, now what? I can play it, play it, I can play it on my machine, but does everybody have it? Do I have to give this to somebody else? Like, what do you do? But, obviously you have coworkers that go, hey, send it to this person, and they send it back. You go, hey, there's a problem here, and yeah, you're just going back and forth trying to, make everything work.
Yeah, that's the big thing is another thing that they always give you a little bit of a primer when you're in school about, hey, it'd be great if you can work well with others, but it really, in the game environment, you've got to be best friends with some of these people because it's back and forth. And I was in a great situation. I'm really good friends with the programmer who was handling all the characters I was doing. So I could, conversations were very easy back and forth, and we were both on the same page. And that's huge for getting what you want in the game to look good, because ultimately everybody wants their stuff in the game to look great. And the animators we're known for making ridiculous requests, or, hey, can you do this, this, and this? And then if you don't have a programmer that's really willing to do that stuff, it's not going to go in the game. So being able to be personable with somebody and really understand where they are coming from, and hopefully if they say I can't do that, or that's not going to be possible for this, it's the truth and it's not just blowing you off.
They don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Very good stuff. It's just kind of practical stuff that you don't really sometimes think about when you're doing your own little shots and stuff. But when you're in a team environment there, that definitely comes to factor there.
Yeah. The pipeline, especially in the game environment, goes upstream and downstream. I mean, you'll be positive that you're done with something, only for it to come all the way back to you and say it's not working, or this is, you got to fix this problem because he's spinning 360 degrees when he finishes a move or something. You're like, what? I don't know what that is.
I definitely had a few of those.
Yeah. We got a spinner, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so Ratchet and Clank just came out. Go check it out. If you, what system is it for? Or what systems?
PS3.
Yeah, PS3. So if you got a PS3,
and it will be on the Vita soon.
Okay.
Soonish.
Soonish. Okay.
I don't know when. But yeah, it came out on PS3. So.
All right, check it out. And then Fuse, we don't have a date on that, but obviously it has to be, I'm assuming, 2013.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I look forward in
spring of 2013.
Yeah. All right, and that one's for which system?
That'll be on PS3 and 360.
Okay. All right.
It's an awesome game. It's actually, out of all the headaches that you deal with at the end, Jeff and I and a couple other guys got to just sit and play it, and we were like, this game's awesome.
How rewarding is that? And you've spent this much time and now actually getting to see it.
It's actually scary.
I know, it's really nervous. It's what I imagine opening weekend is for feature guys when their movie finally comes out. When you're so neck deep in this stuff, you have no idea what's going on. For a lot of times, it's different if you're in QA or something. You're playing the game every day. A lot of times we're not playing the game every day. We've got too much stuff to do to actually sit there and play it. So when Darrell and I and a few others finally got to join a game and play it for 3 or 4 hours, we were relieved. We're like, oh, thank God. Thank God this is fun.
People are gonna like it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey guys, we really appreciate your time. This has been a lot of fun. I was really hoping for this kind of dynamics for this podcast, and I definitely think we got it. So my magic 8 ball turned out to be true.
It works.
Yeah, I had a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, with that, guys, we are out.